On Monday, May 8th, we went together and visited the mansions of Bedlam. I had been informed that he had once been there before with Mr. Wedderburn, now Lord Loughborough, Mr. Murphy, and Mr. Foote. And I had heard Foote give a very entertaining account of Johnson's happening to have his attention arrested by a man who was very furious, and who, while beating his straw, supposed it to be William Duke of Cumberland, whom he was punishing for his cruelties in Scotland in 1746. My very honourable friend, General Sir George Howard, who served in the Duke of Cumberland's army, has assured me that the cruelties were not imputable to His Royal Highness. There was nothing peculiarly remarkable this day, but the general contemplation of insanity was very affecting. I accompanied him home and dined and drank tea with Johnson. Talking of an acquaintance of ours, later footnote tells us this is Croker, but it could also be Dr. Michael Lort or Late. Distinguished for knowing an uncommon variety of miscellaneous articles, both in antiquities and polite literature, Johnson observed, "You know, sir, he runs about with little weight upon his mind." And talking of another very ingenious gentleman, it says here this is Stevens, who from the warmth of his temper was at variance with many of his acquaintances, and wished to avoid them, Johnson said, "Sir, he leads the life of an outlaw." On Friday, May 12th, as he had been so good as to assign me a room at his house, where I might sleep occasionally, when I happened to sit with him to a late hour, I took possession of it this night, found everything in excellent order, and was attended by honest Francis with a most civil assiduity. I asked Johnson whether I might go to a consultation with another lawyer upon Sunday, as that appeared to me to be doing work as much in my way as if an artisan should work on the day appropriated for religious rest. Johnson said, "Why, sir, when you are of consequence enough to oppose the practice of consulting upon Sunday, you should do it. But you may go now. It is not criminal, though it is not what one should do, who is anxious for the preservation and increase of piety, to which a peculiar observance of Sunday is a great help. The distinction is clear between what is of moral and what is of religious, ritual obligation." On Saturday, May 13th, I breakfasted with Johnson by invitation, accompanied by Mr. Andrew Crosby, a Scotch advocate, whom he had seen at Edinburgh, and the Honourable Colonel, now General, Edward Stopford, brother of Lord Courtdown, who was desirous of being introduced to him. His tea and rolls and butter, and the whole breakfast apparatus were all in such decorum, and his behaviour was so courteous, that Colonel Stopford was quite surprised, and wondered at his having heard of so much said of Johnson's slovenliness and roughness. I have preserved nothing of what passed, except that Crosby pleased him much by talking learnedly of alchemy, as to which Johnson was not a positive unbeliever, but rather delighted in considering what progress had actually been made in the transmutation of metals, what near approaches there had been to the making of gold, and told us that it was affirmed that a person in the Russian dominions had discovered the secret, but died without revealing it, as imagining it would be prejudicial to society. He added that it was not impossible, but it might in time be generally known. It being asked whether it was reasonable for a man to be angry at another whom a woman had preferred to him, Johnson said, "I do not see, sir, that it is reasonable for a man to be angry at another whom a woman has preferred to him, but angry he is, no doubt, and he is loath to be angry at himself." Before setting out for Scotland on the 23rd, I was frequently in his company at different places, but during this period have recorded only 2 remarks, one concerning Garrett, quote, "He has not Latin enough. He finds out the Latin by the meaning, rather than the meaning by the Latin," unquote. And another concerning writers of travels who, he observed, were more defective than any other writers. I thought Garrick was dead already, but maybe not. I passed many hours with him on the 17th, of which I find all my memorial is, quote, much laughing, unquote. It should seem he had that day been in a humour of jocularity and merriment, and upon such occasions I never knew a man to laugh more heartily. We may suppose that the high relish of a state so different from his habitual gloom produced more than ordinary exertions of that distinguishing faculty of man, which has puzzled philosophers so much to explain. Johnson's laugh was as remarkable as any circumstance in his manner. It was a kind of good-humoured growl. Tom Davies described it drolly enough. He laughs like a rhinoceros. Letter here to Bennett Langton, Esquire. Dear Sir, I have an old amanuensis. Footnote here says this is probably Peyton. In great distress. I have given what I think I can give, and begged till I cannot tell where to beg again. I put into his hands this morning 4 guineas. If you could collect 3 guineas more, it would clear him from his present difficulty. I am, sir, your most humble servant, May 21st, 1775, Sam Johnson. To James Boswell, Esquire. Dear Sir, I make no doubt but you are now safely lodged in your own habitation, and have told all your adventures to Mrs. Boswell and Miss Veronica. Pray teach Veronica to love me. Bid her not mind Mamma. Mrs. Thrale has taken cold and been very much disordered, but I hope is grown well. Mr. Langton went yesterday to Lincolnshire, and has invited Nicolaida, it says here a learned Greek, to follow him. Beauclerk talks of going to Bath. I am to set out on Monday, so there is nothing but dispersion. I have returned Lord Hale's entertaining sheets, but must stay till I come back for more, because it will be inconvenient to send them after me in my vagrant state. I promised Mrs. Macaulay, footnote here says this is the wife of the Reverend Mr. Kenneth Macaulay, author of the History of St. Kilda, that I would try to serve her son at Oxford. I have not forgotten it, nor am unwilling to perform it. If they desire to give him an English education, it should be considered whether they cannot send him for a year or two to an English school. If he comes immediately from Scotland, he can make no figure in our universities. The schools in the north, I believe, are cheap, and when I was a young man, were eminently good. There were 2 little books published by the Foulis, Telemachus and Collins's poems, each a shilling. I would be glad to have them. Make my compliments to Mrs. Boswell, though she does not love me. You see what perverse things ladies are, and how little fit to be trusted with feudal estates. When she mends and loves me, there may be more hope of her daughters. I will not send compliments to my friends by name, because I would be loath to leave any out in the enumeration. Tell them, as you see them, how well I speak of Scotch politeness, and Scotch hospitality, and Scotch beauty, and everything Scotch, but Scotch oatcakes and Scotch prejudices. Let me know the answer to Rasay, and the decision relating to Sir Alan. I am, my dearest sir, with great affection, your most obliged and most humble servant, May 27, 1775, Sam Johnson. Footnote here about Sir Alan. A lawsuit carried on by Sir Alan MacLean, chief of his clan, to recover certain parts of his family estates from the Dukes of Argyll. Doesn't say what happened with it, though. After my return to Scotland, I wrote 3 letters to Johnson, from which I extract the following passages. I have seen Lord Hale since I came down. He thinks it wonderful that you are pleased to take so much pains in revising his annals. I told him that you said you were well rewarded by the entertainment which you have in reading them. There have been a numerous flight of Hebrideans in Edinburgh this summer, whom I have been happy to entertain in my house. Mr. Donald McQueen, a very learned minister in the Isle of Skye, whom both Dr. Johnson and I have mentioned with regard, that's a footnote, and Lord Mondabo supped with me one evening. They joined in controverting your proposition that the Gaelic of the Highlands and Isles of Scotland was not written until of late. My mind has been somewhat dark this summer. I have need of your warming and vivifying rays, and I hope I shall have them frequently. I am going to pass some time with my father at Auchinleck. To James Boswell, Esquire. Dear Sir, I am now returned from the annual ramble into the middle counties. Having seen nothing I had not seen before, I have nothing to relate. Time has left that part of the island few antiquities, and commerce has left the people no singularities. I was glad to go abroad, and perhaps glad to come home, which is, in other words, I am afraid, weary of being at home and weary of being abroad. Is not this the state of life? But if we confess this weariness, let us not lament it, for all the wise and all the good say that we may cure it. For the black fumes which rise in your mind, I can prescribe nothing but that you disperse them by honest business or innocent pleasure, and by reading, sometimes easy and sometimes serious. Change of place is useful, and I hope that your residence at Auchinleck will have many good effects. That I should have given pain to Rassay, I am sincerely sorry, and I am therefore very much pleased that he is no longer uneasy. He still thinks that I have represented him as personally giving up the chieftainship. I meant only that it was no longer contested between the two houses, and supposed it settled, perhaps, by the cession of some remote generation in the house of Dunvegan. Or Dunvegan? I am sorry the advertisement was not continued for 3 or 4 times in the paper. That Lord Mondaubon and Mr. McQueen should controvert a position contrary to the imaginary interest of literary or national prejudice might be easily imagined, but of a standing fact there ought to be no controversy. If there are men with tails, catch an homo cauditus, a man with a tail. If there was writing of old in the Highlands or Hebrides in the Erse language, produce the manuscripts. Where men write, they will write to one another, and some of these letters, in families studious of their ancestry, will be kept. In Wales there are many manuscripts. I have now 3 parcels of Lord Hale's history, which I propose to return all the next week. That his respect for my little observations should keep his work in suspense makes one of the evils of my journey. It is in our language, I think, a new mode of history, which tells all that is wanted and, I suppose, all that is known, without labored splendor of language or affected subtlety of conjecture. The exactness of his dates raises my wonder. He seems to have the closeness of Henault without his constraint. Mrs. Frail was so entertained with your journal, footnote here says, my Journal of a Tour of the Hebrides, which that lady read in the original manuscript, available on Amazon.com, that she almost read herself blind. She has a great regard for you. Of Mrs. Boswell, though she knows in her heart that she does not love me, he's always picking on this lady. All right. Though she knows she does not love me, I am always glad to hear any good, and hope that she and the little dear ladies will have neither sickness nor any other affliction. But she knows that she does not care what becomes of me, and for that she may be sure that I think her very much to blame. Rolling my eyes a little bit at that. He's laying it on a little thick. Never, my dear sir, do you take it into your head to think that I do not love you. You may settle yourself in full confidence both of my love and my esteem. I love you as a kind man, I value you as a worthy man, and I hope in time to reverence you as a man of exemplary piety. I hold you, as Hamlet has said, in my heart of hearts, and therefore it is little to say that I am, sir, your affectionate humble servant, London, August 27, 1775, Sam Johnson. To the same. Sir, In these papers, footnote here says, another parcel of Lord Hale's Annals of Scotland, there is little alteration attempted. Do not suppose me negligent. I have read them perhaps more closely than the rest, but I find nothing worthy of an objection. Write to me soon and write often and tell me all your honest heart. I am, sir, yours affectionately, August 30th, 1775, Sam Johnson. To the same. My dear sir, I now write to you, lest in some of your freaks and humours you should fancy yourself neglected. Such fancies I must entreat you never to admit, at least never to indulge. For my regard for you is so radicated and fixed that it is become part of my mind, and cannot be effaced by some cause uncommonly violent. Therefore, whether I write or not, set your thoughts at rest. I now write to tell you that I shall not very soon write again, for I am to set out tomorrow on another journey. Your friends are all well at Stratham, and in Lesterfields, I'm guessing. Spelled Leicester Fields. Make my compliments to Mrs. Boswell if she is in good humour with me. I am, sir, etc., September 14th, 1775, Sam Johnson. What he mentions in such light terms as I am now to set out tomorrow on another journey, I soon afterwards discovered was no less than a tour to France with Mr. and Mrs. Thrale. This was the only time in his life that he went upon the continent. I didn't know that. To Mr. Robert Levitt, September 18, 1775, from Calais. Dear Sir, we are here in France, after a very pleasing passage of no more than 6 hours. I know not when I shall write again, and therefore I write now, though you cannot suppose that I have much to say. You have seen France yourself. From this place we are going to Rouen, and from Rouen to Paris, Rouen, where Mr. Thrale designs to stay about 5 or 6 weeks. We have a regular recommendation to the English residents, so we shall not be taken for vagabonds. We think to go one way and return another, and see as much as we can. I will try to speak a little French. I tried hitherto but little, but I spoke sometimes. If I heard better, I suppose I should learn faster. I am, sir, your humble servant, Sam Johnson. To the same. Paris, October 22nd, 1775. Dear Sir, we are still here, as commonly very busy, and looking about us. We have been today at Versailles. You have seen it, and I shall not describe it. We came yesterday from Fontainebleau, where the court is now. We went to see the King and Queen at dinner, and the Queen was so impressed by Miss Thrale that she sent one of the gentlemen to inquire who she was. I find all true that you have ever told me of Paris. Mr. Thrale is very liberal, and keeps us 2 coaches and a very fine table. But I think our cookery very bad. The English complaining about the French cooking, that's funny. Mrs. Thrale got into a convent of English nuns, and I talked with her through the grate, and I am very kindly used by the English Benedictine friars. But upon the whole I cannot make much acquaintance here, and though the churches, palaces, and some private houses are very magnificent, there is no very great pleasure after having seen many and seeing more. At least the pleasure, whatever it be, must sometime have an end, and we are beginning to think that we shall come home. Mr. Thrale calculates that, as we left Streatham on the 15th of September, we shall see it again about the 15th of November. I think I had not been on this side of the sea 5 days before I found a sensible improvement in my health. I ran a race in the rain this day and beat Baretti. Baretti is a fine fellow and speaks French, I think, quite as well as in English. Make my compliments to Mrs. Williams, and give my love to Francis, and tell my friends that I am not lost. I am, dear sir, your affectionate, humble, and etc., Sam Johnson. And that's all for today. Till next time, bye from Boswell.